Nintendo Switch!
How's it going, everybody? It's Young here, and welcome to a Nintendo Switch discussion video. Today I want to talk a bit about possible hidden features of the Switch, the highly anticipated new console from Nintendo. So far we know that the Switch is a console that primarily functions inside this tablet form factor, and the whole idea behind it is that at home you can dock it to enjoy a home console experience, and on the go you can undock it, slide on these Joi Con Controllers on either side, and take your games on the go with no compromise. And since the Switch is the tablet itself, you're actually taking the whole console with you, with the Joi Con Controllers ensuring that you're not restricted in terms of controls. They have two proper analog sticks, face and directional buttons, two shoulder and analog trigger buttons, and probably analog sticks that click. So with the Switch, you've got everything you need to play today's AAA titles in an elegant, portable form factor and solution. That was the message of the Switch reveal trailer. But there's more to that trailer than meets the eye, offering glimpses of hidden features that Nintendo has yet to reveal. So in this video, I'll be pointing out every possible hidden feature for the Nintendo Switch that has been hinted through all the recent promotional materials. The first possible hidden feature I want to talk about is the touchscreen. Nintendo has yet to confirm or deny whether the Switch tablet screen is touch-enabled, but something interesting that I noticed towards the beginning of the trailer is that if you pause at the right time, it's possible to see these fingerprint smudges throughout the screen. This is strange considering the man lifts the console by holding the controllers, never once touching the screen, so perhaps this suggests that the display has been used as a touchscreen by this man. Or maybe someone forgot to wipe the console before filming the trailer. On a personal note, this screen just screams touchscreen. It's got a glass display that is very reminiscent of today's tablets. If the Nintendo Switch intends to be more than a gaming machine and allow other types of media consumption like web browsing and video streaming, a touchscreen would certainly be very convenient. And while we are on this shot, I would like to point out that this right here is not a mini D-pad, it's a plus button, which has been paired with a minus button on the other side. There are still some people out there who think this is a small-ass D-pad implemented in a similar manner to the C-Stick on the new 3DS, but it's just a plus button. Speaking of buttons, one of the most surprising things about the left Joy-Con controller is that it ditches Nintendo's regular trademarked D-pad for a split D-pad. The regular D-pad can still be found on the Pro controller, but this is what you'll mostly be using on the go. But something I would like to point out is that this split D-pad is actually not an unfamiliar feature. We're actually looking at the C buttons from the N64 controller. Yup, just when you thought Nintendo had ditched the idea, they bring it back in full force for the Nintendo Switch. So another feature of the Switch, this one hidden in plain sight, is the return of the C buttons. This next hidden feature is not so much surprising as it is reassuring. Something that the trailer did not clarify is if the Switch can be charged on the go. As it turns out, the trailer very subtly answers that question in this shot. Hanging below the Switch tablet is a cable that was clearly hooked up to charge the device. So yes, you most definitely can charge the Switch on the go. Again, not all that surprising, but reassuring nonetheless. As for whether Nintendo will be using a proprietary port or something a bit more standard for charging, as it turns out, Nintendo Switch might be employing USB Type-C. Check out this promotional image that Nintendo released after the console's announcement. If we zoom in, you can see a port with the same oval shape and size as a USB Type-C port. I wouldn't say this is 100% confirmed quite yet, but from the looks of it, this seems highly likely. Another question Nintendo hasn't directly answered is whether the Nintendo Switch will support microSD cards. Well, it looks like the trailer might have very subtly hinted at the feature. If we take a closer look at this little area behind the kickstand, you may notice a little rectangular indentation here. If I were a betting man, I would say this is definitely a microSD card slot. This kind of reminds me of the Surface Pro, which also has a microSD card slot underneath its kickstand. So this right here is nothing unconventional. So yeah, for those seeking extra storage, it looks like microSD card will be one of your options. Now, this next hidden feature might be a bit of a stretch, but something else that some people noticed is this slot at the center of the device. One interesting speculation is that this might be a stylus slot. I personally think that Nintendo is done with stylus gaming and are moving more towards conventional gaming, but this is Nintendo we're talking about, and nothing they ever do is conventional, so you never know. If the console does feature a stylus though, I certainly wouldn't complain. Drawing on this thing or taking notes could be pretty cool and might give the Switch more functionality beyond just a gaming console. I'm still going to say that this is an improbable hidden feature, but not impossible. And while we're checking the back of this device, there are two other hidden features I would like to point out. The first one is a detach button. You can't see it in this shot, but if you check out this official promotional image, it's this little button below the trigger. It's a small detail, but it alleviates concerns that the Switch tablet might frequently slide out of the Joi Con controllers and cause inadvertent drops. It looks like the Joi controllers will lock in place and then easily slide out once this button is pushed. The second hidden feature on the back of this device is a second air vent. It's very easy to see the one on the top of the device, but the one on the back is much more subtle. Further confirming that this is indeed an air vent is the indentation that can be found on the back of the docking station, which is likely a cutout to allow air to flow through the device. Even the car stand accessory that Nintendo showed off in the trailer makes consideration of this by cutting out holes where the back air vent would be. So the Nintendo Switch will definitely feature a back air vent for better system cooling. Next up, let's skip ahead all the way to this portion of the reveal trailer, where we see two dudes using individual Joy-Con controllers separately to play Mario Kart. In regards to using Joi controllers like this, one of the biggest concerns has to do with the number of inputs. With just a joystick and 4 buttons, 5 if you include the clickable analog stick, many feel as though this might be too few input options to properly play some of the more complex games locally. Fortunately, it looks like Nintendo thought about this as well. Take special note of where their index fingers are positioned. Doesn't it look like they're placing them on shoulder buttons? Now, they're hard to see in this shot, but if we skip ahead to this scene and take a closer look, you can clearly see some kind of protrusion on the side of the controller that goes into the Switch tablet. Now, I know what you're thinking. Aren't those just guide rails to keep the controllers in place for when they're docked onto the Switch? Normally, I would agree with you, but there are two key pieces of evidence that point to the protrusion doubling as both guide rails and shoulder buttons. One, every single person in the trailer and in promotional images who use the Joi controllers in this manner can be seen positioning their index finger on those protrusions. I've seen a lot of people hold controllers, and not everyone instinctively positions their index fingers like that. It's mostly gamers who do that. I'm almost certain that whoever directed this trailer specifically instructed the actors to place their fingers in this manner as a subtle hint to gamers. But the real nail in the coffin is that it's actually possible to see someone using the guide rails as shoulder buttons. Let's go back to this footage of the two dudes playing Mario Kart. If we slow down the footage and look closely, you may notice that at one point, one of the dude's right index fingers hits the shoulder button, and as soon as he does that, the character on his side of the screen reacts accordingly. And hell, if this isn't enough evidence for you, check out this official Nintendo Switch promotional image. The protrusion is hard to miss at this point, and notice how the index finger here is also placed on it as if it were a button. So while Nintendo hasn't confirmed or denied this, I am almost certain that the Joy-Con guide rails will double as shoulder buttons for more input options. Very clever. This essentially gives us an SNES controller with an analog stick in place of a D-pad. I'm digging it. On the topic of Joy-Con controllers, skipping back to this scene, another possible hidden feature that Nintendo may be very subtly hinting at is the ability to equip individual Joy-Con controllers with a shell to make them more ergonomic. It's very subtle, but if you zoom in, you may notice that the surface with the guide rail shoulder buttons are noticeably rounded out compared to the other shots. Furthermore, check out the shoulder buttons. Notice how they look less like guide rails and more like actual buttons now. So one possibility is that Nintendo may launch Joy-Con controller shells or cases as optional accessories to make them more comfortable to hold and to make the shoulder buttons a bit more tactile. I do have some doubts about this theory though. It just kind of seems cumbersome to carry around these cases, and to put them on and take them off every time you slide them in or out of the console. Sounds very counterproductive to the idea of easily and quickly switching between the various configurations. But hey, the footage speaks for itself. The surfaces here definitely look more rounded out than in other shots. Now, if the Joy-Con shells do end up being a thing, as long as they're optional and as long as the Joy-Con controllers are serviceably comfortable by default, I'd be okay with this. While I'm not expecting to use the controllers like this very often, I can totally see how convenient this can be for casual, impromptu local multiplayer gameplay. Last but not least, for hidden Nintendo Switch features, let's go back to this shot of the trailer. Something else that is subtly hinted at is the possibility that the bottom surface of the right Joy-Con controller might feature an IR pointer similar to those of the Wii Remote. If we stop the footage at the right moment and zoom in, you may notice this shiny black part at the bottom here that is reminiscent to the Wii Remote's pointer. So the theory out there is that when using the Switch in TV mode, you can undock the right Joy-Con controller, flip it around, and then use it as an impromptu pointer device, with a small portion of the Switch tablet that's sticking out of the dock acting as a sensor bar. Apparently, the point of this is to replicate the touchscreen functionalities for when the Switch is in portable mode on the TV. Instead of using your fingers to touch the screen in TV mode, you would use the pointer to navigate through menus and maybe even to play some select games that do employ touch functionalities. But then again, this is all a theory based on this unknown black spot below the right Joy-Con controller. What I am sure of is that if they do employ this feature, it'll very much be optional. I think everything on the Switch, from gaming to menu navigation, can be done with traditional inputs like buttons and analog sticks, but the option to use touch and the IR pointer might be there for those who enjoy these forms of input as well. And I can also totally see how these additional inputs might be useful for specific types of games like Mario Maker. The touch functionalities of the Wii U gamepad were pivotal to the experience, and should games like these be created or ported over to the Nintendo Switch, the touch controls and the IR pointer might come in handy. But again, I'm sure these will be optional features, and one way you can tell is that Nintendo decided to place no emphasis on these features in the reveal trailer. So to summarize the possible hidden features of the Nintendo Switch from the reveal trailer, the console may have a touchscreen. It brings back the C buttons from the N64 controller. You can charge it on the go through a simple cable that plugs into your nearest outlet. The charging port might be USB-C. Its Microsd card slot might be situated behind the kickstand. It might feature some kind of Stylus Slot. The Joy-Con controllers feature a Detach Button. The console has a second air vent on the back of the unit. The Joy-Con controllers might feature guide rails that double as shoulder buttons. The Joy-Con controllers might get a shell accessory that adds ergonomic comfort. And finally, the bottom of the right Joy-Con controller might feature an IR pointer. Many of these definitely do sound like intriguing and clever ideas, but we'll have to wait for official confirmation to determine if any of these hidden features are real and to see whether those concepts will triumph in execution. What are your thoughts about these possible hidden features? Which ones do you think are likely and which ones do you think aren't? Which ones would you be most excited for? Let us know in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things Nintendo Switch, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out!